When it comes to writing great training program design sequence, using a process is no different than a process you would use to run your business. And the business of writing programs is super important. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be here. So the first thing that we're going to talk about as far as the process of writing programs is something I call the 5-step programming process. Now, I've taught this to coaches over the last 3 to 5 years, and it has evolved quite a bit in terms of how we use it and how we set the stage for writing a great program. But the tenets of it have remained intact. Now, I want to preface this by saying this is going to start off being more work. Okay, it's going to require more work to write a training program in the beginning. But over time, this process is what you will leverage to make sure that there are no oversights, to make sure that you are potentially putting new clients in the best possible position out of the gate. And obviously, having a process will make things faster in the long run. But like anything, it's going to be new to you. It's going to be something you learn and something that you practice implementing. And then once you've dialed that in and you've used it a few times, it gets easier and easier each time. With this process, you can write an effective block of training, 4-week block of training in 30 minutes. That's my goal for you. 30 minutes to write 4 weeks of programming. The days of writing programming taking 1-2 hours, I hear that more times than I want to admit, should be in the past, okay? But like anything, we got to set the stage for all things to come and build a proper foundation. So this 5-step process is going to allow you to do that. So step number 1, this is the most basic step of them all, but this is essentially figuring out what your client is doing on what days. Okay, so figuring out that they're going to train on, say, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, those are their main training days, and being able to say, okay, this is the days that they have available to them. So this is what we're going to plan for our week. And then we can start getting more granular with what we put in. But the first step is basically just figuring out when they're doing their training. And again, it might sound very basic, and it is, but this is something that I see coaches overlook. They put someone in a 5-day-a-week program when they can only train 3 days. And of course, during the onboarding process, you're going to figure all this stuff out, and going through onboarding as you will in this course, you'll be able to see that there are some important steps that we need to make to understand where someone is starting from. So the first thing is just figuring out where they're doing what. Okay, so you'll be plugging that in. And if you have a template overlay, which you've seen in this course, hopefully you've seen. If you haven't, then make sure that you are seeing that. We're just basically deciding upon what days they're doing their training. Okay, so that's step number 1. Now, step number 2 is once we know what days they're doing what, or how many days they're doing their training, we can start deciding on what they're going to be doing, the style of training, full body training, a hybrid approach to training. Those are things that we can leverage to align with the client's schedule. Okay, so aligning with the client's schedule. And of course, with that, we need to know the training methods, which is another step within this process. So understanding the methods that we're going to potentially lean on. Now, for some people, you might not be leaning on anything complex. You might be doing zone 2 cardio on one day. You might be doing just basic repeated effort or foundational movement pattern strength on the other day. And that might be it for the training program. Now, step number 4 is when we start getting a little bit more detailed with it, a little bit more nuanced as far as sets, reps, rest intervals, plugging in the fundamentals of program design. This is where we're going to be doing that. Now, if we go towards the other end of the spectrum, you might be using some advanced training methods like cluster sets and dynamic effort training, and of course, some mixed modality style conditioning on other days. So there's a lot of ways to skin the cat, but having this overlay of our first 4 steps, that is deciding what the client is doing on what days, based off their availability, deciding on the style of training we're going to leverage that aligns with their availability, and then deciding on how we're going to plug this stuff in, the sets, reps, and rest intervals you're going to use, the fundamentals of our program design, like our exercise order, exercise selection, and where that stuff fits in. Deciding upon the methods that we're going to use, whether they're complex and more advanced, or they're just basic foundational movement pattern strength. Now, the final step of this process is a step that comes after you've already delivered the programming. This is the checking in, getting feedback, seeing how the client is feeling. This is something on a 4-week block of training, or let's say you're doing a 4-week block of training, and on week 3, you're checking in with your client and asking critical questions about the program. So you're probably checking in, or at least you should be checking in on a weekly basis. But on that 3rd week of a 4-week block, you'd want to know, how is the training going? What are you liking? What are you not liking? Is there anything that's not working as far as equipment goes? Has something changed in your life? Have you, hey, I see you've only been able to do 40% of the training I planned for you. Where can we do better? What can I do to help support you and get you in a better position? These are all things that you will ask to understand how we can iterate and move forward. And once you understand how to iterate and move forward, the client's gonna know that you're taking the time to understand them, you're taking the time to make improvements, and you're taking the time to make sure that their best interest is in mind. This goes such a long way. I can't overstate this enough. It goes such a long way to show that you care and that you are a professional, because we're living in a world of online coaches where it's just the trust of online coaches has gone down. The high ticket world started off with a boom and people were charging just astronomical prices for training. And with that, we have people that are not using any process whatsoever. They're not iterating the program. They're not creating a custom plan for their clients. That is a big mistake. And you're here because you want to be an elite coach. And this is the way we do it. So that fifth step is super, super important. Check in, collect feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. Find out how they're feeling. Find out if anything in their life has changed. Look at their compliance score. That's a very easy thing to do. No matter what app you're using, you'll be able to see if they've done the training or not. If they haven't done the training, then there's a problem. There's something that we need to do better as their coach to get them potentially in a different program to align better with their schedule. And if that does happen, let's say that their compliance score is not as what you'd want it to be, which in my mind would be at least about 80%, okay? 80% is something that we can start with. And if you use the proper training split to match their availability, we should be able to do that. If someone can only train 2 days a week, don't put them in a 5-day-a-week program. If someone can train 3 days a week, then that gives us enough information to understand what is going to be the right fit for them. So get to step number 5, and maybe comes back that now they have less availability, which you will see happen. It will happen with clients you work with where they have something pop up or something changes in their life. This is when you need to go through that process again and iterate and say, okay, you know what? We started off with using this hybrid split. It's probably not a good fit anymore. So let's go to 2 full body sessions per week and 1 aerobic session, and we're gonna be good to go. And let's do that until things get back to normal in your life. So that is it in a nutshell, the 5-step process. Super important. Learn this process, learn how to leverage, knowing what days they're going to train based on their availability, knowing now what system to use with that level of availability, knowing how to plug in the nuances, the methods that we're going to use, the sets, reps, and rest intervals, and then know how to take feedback. It is going to make the biggest difference in your business. You will be able to retain clients longer and get them better results.